Most people assume hosting an F1 race is a guaranteed money printer for any city. Millions of fans, global TV coverage, luxury brands throwing money around. It all sounds like an economic slam dunk, right? But the reality is that some cities have lost hundreds of millions trying to chase that dream, while others have quietly transformed their entire regional economy because of how they approached it. The difference all comes down to understanding what a Grand Prix actually does to a local economy, and that will all start to make sense as we unpack the real numbers behind these billion-dollar weekends. The upfront reality. Let's start with the part no one likes to talk about, the cost. Hosting a Formula One race isn't like booking a concert. You can't just rent out a stadium and call it a day. Cities have to pay Liberty Media, F1's owner, a hosting fee that typically ranges from $20 million to $40 million per year. And that's just the entry ticket. That doesn't include building the infrastructure. Take the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. Before the first car even turned a wheel in 2012, the facility cost $400 million to construct. Vietnam spent over $600 million building a street circuit in Hanoi for a race that never even happened because of the pandemic. Miami's newest addition to the calendar required $60 million in upgrades to the Hard Rock Stadium complex. These aren't small investments. These are bet the farm level commitments. And here's where it gets interesting. Unlike a concert or a football game, an F1 race doesn't just need a venue. It needs an entire city to cooperate. Roads get shut down for weeks. Public transportation gets rerouted. Local businesses near the circuit can't operate normally. In Monaco, residents literally can't drive their cars for over a month because the streets are either being set up or torn down. For Singapore's night race, major highways close at 4 p.m. on race days, creating traffic chaos across the entire island. You'd think this would make cities run in the opposite direction. But over 20 cities around the world are currently fighting to get on the F1 calendar. So what are they seeing that makes this worth it? The Singapore model. Singapore is probably the best case study for how a Grand Prix can transform an economy when done right. When they launched the first ever night race in 2008, the government had a very specific goal. They weren't just trying to make money from ticket sales. They were trying to rebrand Singapore itself. At the time, Singapore was seen as a business hub, efficient, clean, but boring. The kind of place where international companies set up regional headquarters, not where people took luxury vacations. The F1 race was designed to change that perception entirely, and the numbers show it worked. In the first year alone, Singapore's Grand Prix attracted 100,000 international visitors. But here's the crucial part. These weren't average tourists. F1 fans, particularly those who travel internationally for races, are in the top 5% of global income earners. These are people who think nothing of spending $500 on a hotel room, $300 on dinner, and thousands on shopping. Singapore's tourism board estimated that each F1 visitor spent an average of $3,000 during their stay, compared to $1,200 for a typical tourist. But the real genius was the timing. The race takes place in September, traditionally a slower month for tourism in Southeast Asia. Singapore essentially created a peak season out of thin air. Hotels that would normally run at 60% occupancy were suddenly fully booked at premium rates. Restaurants in the Marina Bay area reported revenue increases of 200 to 300% during race weekend. Even businesses nowhere near the track saw a boost because the city became a destination, not just a venue. Over a period of 11 years, independent economists estimate Singapore's Grand Prix has generated over $1.5 billion in cumulative economic impact. That's not revenue. That's the total economic activity stimulated by the event. For a race that costs roughly $135 to $150 million per year to host, that's a return most cities would kill for. The Melbourne Contrast. Now let's look at Melbourne, which has hosted the Australian Grand Prix since 1996. On paper, it should be a similar success story. The race draws over 400,000 fans across the weekend, making it one of the best attended events on the calendar. It generates significant media coverage, and it's positioned as the season opener, which should give it extra prestige. But here's the thing, Melbourne's race takes place in Albert Park, a public park in a residential neighborhood. Unlike Singapore's Showcase District or Monaco's famous streets, Albert Park becomes a construction zone for over 2 months every year. The local community has to deal with noise, restricted access, and disrupted routines. Local businesses just outside the park perimeter don't see the same windfall that Singapore's Marina Bay district does. Economic studies have shown mixed results. A 2018 report commissioned by the Victorian government claimed the race generated $174 million in economic benefit. But independent economists pointed out that this figure didn't account for displacement, the phenomenon where regular economic activity gets replaced rather than supplemented. Restaurants near Albert Park might do great business during the race, but they lose regular customers for weeks leading up to it. The net gain is much smaller than the headline number suggests. Despite these concerns, Melbourne keeps renewing its contract. Why? Because there's another factor at play that's harder to measure, but arguably more valuable: global brand positioning. The Australian Grand Prix puts Melbourne on television screens in over 180 countries. It positions the city as dynamic, sports-focused, and internationally connected. When companies decide where to host conferences, when wealthy individuals choose where to invest, brand perception matters, and you can't easily put a dollar figure on that. The infrastructure wildcard. Here's where the economic equation gets really interesting. Some cities use F1 as a catalyst for infrastructure projects they wanted anyway. This is where the long-term economic benefits can dwarf the immediate race weekend impact. Baku, Azerbaijan is the perfect example. When they announced an F1 race in 2016, most people had never heard of the city. It's the capital of a country most couldn't locate on a map. But Azerbaijan's government saw F1 as an excuse to accelerate urban development projects worth billions of dollars. The race circuit wraps around Baku's old city and waterfront. To accommodate it, the government built a new boulevard, upgraded crumbling roads, installed modern lighting, created public viewing areas, and renovated historic buildings that had been neglected for decades. These improvements didn't just benefit F1, they permanently enhanced the city's infrastructure and tourism appeal. Before F1, Baku attracted about 2 million tourists annually. By 2019, that number had grown to 3.2 million, and crucially, these tourists were staying longer and spending more. The race put Baku on the map, but the infrastructure improvements gave people a reason to come back. Compare that to Valencia, Spain, which built a spectacular street circuit in 2008, but failed to integrate it into broader urban planning. The circuit required road closures and barriers that disrupted the port district, and when F1 left in 2012 after just 5 years, the infrastructure investment served no other purpose. The result? A net economic loss estimated at over 100 million euros for the Valencia region. The hidden costs no one talks about. But we need to address the elephant in the room. Not every city makes money from F1. In fact, many lose money deliberately, and they know it going in. The reality is that hosting fees, infrastructure costs, and operational expenses often exceed the direct economic benefits. A 2022 study by Oxford Economics found that only 6 of the 21 races on the calendar generated a positive direct financial return for their host cities. The rest operated at a loss. So why do they do it? Because governments don't view it as a profit-making venture. They view it as a marketing expense. Consider the advertising equivalent. A 30-second commercial during the Super Bowl costs $7 million and reaches about 100 million American viewers for literally half a minute. An F1 race provides hours of global broadcast exposure with your city as the backdrop, reaching over 400 million viewers worldwide. From that perspective, paying $30 to $40 million per year starts to look reasonable. But that only works if the city can afford to treat it as a marketing budget item. Wealthy city-states like Monaco, Abu Dhabi, and Singapore can easily absorb the costs. But when cities like Valencia or Yeongam in South Korea bet big on F1 without having the economic cushion to sustain losses, the results can be devastating. Yeongam is particularly cautionary. South Korea spent $460 million building a circuit in a rural area, hoping F1 would stimulate regional development. Instead, the race ran from 2010 to 2013, never attracted large crowds, failed to generate significant tourism, and left the region with a white elephant circuit that now sits mostly abandoned. That's nearly $500 million, with almost nothing to show for it. The local business paradox. Here's something counterintuitive that happens in every F1 city. Some local businesses boom while others suffer, and it's not always the ones you'd expect. Hotels and restaurants near the circuit obviously benefit, but businesses in other parts of the city often see revenue drops because locals deliberately avoid the area during race weekend. In Monaco, many residents literally leave town for the entire week. In Singapore, locals who work in the Marina Bay area often take vacation days to avoid the chaos. Regular customers stay away, and while they're replaced by race fans, those fans are concentrated in specific areas. The businesses that win big are often the ones that plan strategically. Melbourne has bakeries that create F1-themed pastries. Singapore has bars that run watch parties for the qualifying sessions. Austin has restaurants that create special race weekend menus at premium prices. These businesses don't just hope for foot traffic, they actively target the F1 audience. Meanwhile, a pharmacy or hardware store near the circuit might be forced to close for several days due to road closures and restricted access, losing revenue with no way to recapture it. The net economic impact on small businesses is far more uneven than the headline tourism numbers suggest. The ultimate question. So does a single F1 race change a local economy? Absolutely. The question is whether it changes it for better or worse, and that depends entirely on execution. Singapore and Austin show the model working. They used F1 as part of a broader strategy to reposition their cities globally, invested in complementary infrastructure, and understood that the race itself was a marketing tool, not a profit center. They accepted short-term costs for long-term brand value. Valencia and Yongam show what happens when cities view F1 as a magic solution without having a coherent strategy. They built circuits in the wrong locations, failed to integrate them into urban planning, and expected the race itself to generate returns it was never designed to produce. The economic impact of an F1 race isn't measured just in hotel bookings and restaurant revenue over one weekend. It's measured in how the city leverages that weekend to change perceptions, attract investment, and position itself on the global stage. Some cities understand that. Others just see the glamour and excitement and assume the money will follow. And that's the difference between Monaco and Valencia, between Singapore and Yongam, between cities that use F1 to transform their economy and cities that get used by F1 and end up with nothing but debt and abandoned grandstands. The race might only last for 3 days, but the economic consequences, good or bad, last for decades.